Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm your host, Jeff Howard, and this is going to be a really fun podcast episode because I've got Nathan Tape with me. Hey, Nathan.
Hey, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Now, you're out in New Orleans. I'm in Los Angeles, so that's my way of letting everybody know we are on Zoom. So if you got a problem with the audio quality, and Zoom actually has a little micro delay, Nathan and I are not going to talk over each other, but if it sounds like we're talking over each other, it's Zoom's fault, not us, because we're extremely polite humans.
To a fault, maybe.
But, so I met Nathan at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival last year in 2023, where his feature film Off Ramp, and when I say his, you're the director and the co-writer with Tim Cairo, and Off Ramp. And I think I told you this, but this podcast has the explicit warning marked, so I can say Off Ramp is just a motherfucking amazingly great indie feature film. So not only do I call it motherfucking great, but more than one jury, you won Best in Fest for Best Feature Film. You actually won the Grand Jury Award for Best Feature Film Thriller. You won Best Director of a Feature Film for yourself. Your actor Scott Turner Schofield won Best Supporting Performer in a Feature Film. I love this award. Your whole cast won that Best Performance by a Cast in Feature Film. Because I think the whole cast does deserve the award often. Like, picking out one member of the cast sometimes feels, I don't know. So, and finally, you and your co-writer Tim Cairo won Best Screenplay for a Feature Film. So, 6 awards, well deserved.
Boy, thank you very much. We're very, very honored, and we're really just so grateful that we were able to win those awards. It's, you make these films, and then when people see them and they enjoy them, it's not like you do it for awards, but man, when that happens, it's just a nice feeling, So we're really, really grateful. And I agree with you. It's really cool to have an ensemble cast award, because sometimes, there is like that kind of thing where, the small parts, you know what I mean? And I think in Off Ramp, there's a lot of like small characters, but no small parts. And so that just kind of like gives that acknowledgement to some of those other folks. Equally, Scott also deserved his award. His performance is unreal, but I think it's really cool to have both. So good job there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know we talked at the Q&A a lot about just you don't aim for awards, but I was just going to bring up that even if you're not aiming for awards, our jury is your peers too. Like people making indie films are on some of our juries, and it's really wonderful to get acknowledged by your peers, I think. So
absolutely, no question. Such an honor. We're all cinephiles ourselves, and we all love films. So having someone else who also makes films to acknowledge that they connected with your film it's really special. So absolutely.
Yeah. And before we jump too much further, you want to tell people where they can catch it, because it has been released now.
Absolutely. Basically anywhere you can rent or buy movies. So Apple TV Plus, Amazon, YouTube Premium, Fandango. There's a whole list of them. I can't remember every one of them right now. But if you go to our website at offrampfilm.com, there is a watch page, offrampfilm.com/watch, that will give you an indication of all the places you can see it. Or just give yourself a little Google search and search for it, and you should be able to find it out there. You can also buy the DVD on Amazon as well. So any of those kind of places you can check out Off Ramp.
Exactly. So people should buy the DVD, have something physical, and then look you up in New Orleans and get you to sign it.
That would be great. I'd be honored to. And honestly, too, like I'm happy to do so. I mean, this is our dream, is to make movies. And so I'm very happy to talk to anyone about the film and share our experience. And if they connect with it, it's very special. So please reach out as well. Our Instagram is Off Ramp Film. All of our socials are Off Ramp Film. And I try to respond to all the DMs that I can. So if you've seen the film and want to ask me a question, send me one.
Excellent. All right. Well, we will probably get back to off ramp. I don't know how long it'll take, but as I warned you, this podcast, I just love diving into people's personal histories because, as I told you, I think people who making an independent film is is probably the most naked and artistic person can be because I mean I have friends who are painters. You put on, you don't have to. I just think it's just one of the hardest things to achieve. It's so collaborative, and yet it also probably all fell on you a lot of the time. So I just find it such a I respect people like yourself so much for taking on the challenge that I love to find out where it all started for you. So you want to go back in time and tell me when you first got, either became a huge film fan or just loved playing with cameras and things?
Yeah, for sure. I was kind of as a kid, I was a bit of a ham. I was an only child. Well, I wasn't really an only child. I had two half brothers, but they were much older than I was. So I kind of grew up a bit as an only child. So I was kind of like a bit of a ham and a little bit like my mom would always, film me and stuff. So I would always like be acting in front of the camera. But there was a couple movies that I saw. I remember seeing Raising Arizona at a very young age, and that was a movie that really it's the first movie that I think I became like aware of the camera, if that makes any sense. Like up until then, like movies had kind of been like invisible, or at least the camera had been kind of invisible. So I think Raising Arizona was one that really kind of like started to capture my sort of attention for cinema. Then, parents always had like, VHS camcorders and things around the house. And so I started playing around with them. And then I would say somewhere in like high school, probably I would say maybe sophomore year in high school, I really started to like experiment with the cameras, and I would take two VCRs and like edit things together. And so I would do all these weird like experimental things where I would like, take music that I liked and like put Pavement on top of like Kermit the Frog and like shit like that, and then just kind of like make weird little like videos and things. So that was in high school. That was really kind of where I kind of started to actually physically start doing it. And then when I went to college, went to Loyola University in New Orleans, and there wasn't actually a film program, but there was like a television program. And so I took photography as like an art pursuit, and then I also took some of these like television programs, television instruction, and I started, kind of marrying that stuff together and kind of messing around with it. And then went to grad school for film and at Loyola Marymount in Los Angeles, and made some films there. And then I'm from New Orleans. That's where I am currently. After graduating, grad school, it was kind of like what do you do now? And surprisingly, it's not a lot of jobs out there for filmmakers as they're young. You have to kind of find your place and do things. We always thought, oh, as soon as I, graduate grad school, someone's just going to walk up with a pile of money and say, here, make a film. Doesn't exactly work like that, unfortunately. But so I came back to New Orleans for like a high school reunion, and one of my good friends was working on a movie in the electric department. And I went and worked with him for a couple of weeks on this movie, and I, really did really well. Was really quick with it because I was really into cinematography and stuff. So I just kind of like took to it really quickly, and very quickly I became a gaffer and into doing lighting in film and television here in New Orleans. And did that for about 15 years, all the while kind of making, music videos and things like that on the side. I'd shoot a feature here and there as a DP, as they would kind of were few and far between as they happened, but I did that. And then, I always wanted to make my own film. But, honestly, I was I think it was a little too sensitive. Like in some ways I was like, I wasn't really ready. I wasn't like kind of hardened by the world enough to like put myself out there. Cause it's really hard, as you said, to make your own film, and you put yourself out there. And when people don't respond, it can be really, It'd be really hard. And I was not as I was just sensitive. So my student film didn't like blow the world off. Like it didn't blow up like I expected. It didn't get me into Sundance and make me a superstar. As I had dreamed. But that doesn't mean it wasn't valid and want some great things about it. But you have to kind of like have realistic expectations. So anyway, I made another short in 2019, and that kind of like it really like made me think about it again, and really like brought me back to the whole idea and showed me, oh yeah, hey, you can do this, like you can make it. So then the pandemic hit in 2020, and we all sat home for 3 months. And I really was like, I really need to make a film. I was like, this really is what I want to do. And I had the script of Off Ramp. Tim and I had worked on it for a long time. And it was one of those things we wanted to make. But I kept going back to work, right? There would be a job that would be offered, and you'd take the job because it was like 3 or 4 months of work, and put a lot of money in my pocket and the whole crew. So it was very hard. As those jobs would come, I kept putting off making the movie. Then when the pandemic hit, it was like, okay, you're only going to do this if you just like make sure you do it and like put everything else aside, because it's always easy to get distracted and it's always easy to go back to doing other things. And I made that decision, and I said, we're going to make the film. So I went back to work after the pandemic. We're back to work for one more season of a television program I was working on, and then said no more after that. I got to dive in full force to do that. And then I did, and we made Off Ramp.
Nice. And I'm going to ask you to back up for one question, which is because it's interesting to hear that you worked as a cinematographer, because I mean, the film looks fantastic. So that kind of checks out. But also, when you were young, were you creative as far as writing and stuff? Because the writing in Off Ramp is so outstanding. It's such an outstandingly well-written film that I also wondered if you were a short story writer or something when you were young, like if you just always wanted to tell stories.
Yeah, I was. I definitely was. Writing, and it was a lot of those things. I was very creative in writing, and actually, when I went to undergrad, my minor was in creative writing, and so there was a number of like I loved reading and writing little short stories and things like that. I never really had the patience to do a long form project until we made Off Ramp. And, that was also just one of those things that, Tim and I really worked together and that's one reason why it is so well written, is that, Tim, he went to AFI and had gone the whole, like, more traditional, like screenwriting route. And funny story, Tim and I knew each other from like we went to in 2001 we went to a New York Film Academy in New York and did like a 6-week film program, and we were in the same we had a little group. It was like 4 people had to like team up, and that was like kind of the teams you would work on each other's films. And so Tim was with this other Canadian named Costa and myself, and there was this other guy named Alpi, who was like this Turkish businessman who was like really into Tarkovsky, and like that was our group. It was a really crazy little group of people, but we all got to know each other, got to be really good friends. And then many years later, like Tim went and studied law in Canada and was going to be a lawyer, and then realized it wasn't his passion. And I, of course, went and started working in movies. And, even though I loved it, it wasn't really my passion. So years later, we reconnected. He was in New Orleans for like a friend's bachelor party, and we hung out. And I was like, I have this crazy idea to make a movie about juggalos. And he was like, let's go. So we teamed up and worked on it together. And yeah, I mean, I definitely, I think, words are so, I'm not good at speaking them, but I'm okay at writing them.
Well, I can't help but comment too that you named some of my favorite schools, because as I've been in this film festival running thing for almost a decade, and I've always actually, but going back even like 20, 30 years, I would always go to this Night of the Directors Guild, where they'd show like 2 films from USC, 2 from UCLA, 2 from Loyola Marymount, and 2 from AFI, I think. And I always kind of preferred the Loyola and AFI films. I don't want to talk too much shit about the other programs, but I just kind of feel like there's a more down to earthness I don't know. I won't go into it too much, but I've actually always, by the way, some of the best films we've shown at Sherman Oaks Film Festival come out of AFI. I love it when there's a
Mm.
short film about a butt plug that kills a person. And then you talk to the person doing their Q&A and they're like, "Yeah, I got my MFA for that."
That's incredible.
I'm like, that is a wonderful story. I love it.
Yeah.
But
No, I,
AFI people come out of there. It's a really good program, and Loyola Marymount's a great graduate film
yeah.
program.
Yeah, and it's grown quite a lot. I think from what I understand, Loyola Marymount's really grown. I mean, I had a great experience there myself. Really great professors and other students as well. And we had a really tight knit group. And I know our class was really tight, and we really helped each other out quite a bit. Maybe it's something about that sort of Jesuit education, because one thing about a Jesuit education is that they force you to educate the whole person, they say, which is, on the one hand, I was always kind of like, there's part of me that was like frustrated by, because I was like, well, I just want to be a DP or a director. So I just want to do that. And you're making me edit and do this other into a producing. But the truth is, to be an independent filmmaker, you really have to do all of these things. And, so it's one of those things that at the time I may not have realized what it was doing for me. But in retrospect, now I look back and I'm like, it really was valuable to do all of those things and to learn every aspect of filmmaking. And it absolutely made me a better filmmaker, because I did spend time editing. I did spend time doing sound and doing all those things. So none of those things became unimportant when it became time to make my film.
For sure. And it makes you a better director and producer, I'm sure, because you get more respect for other roles, right? Like it's not just like, why can't the gaffer get that right? You're like, no, sometimes it's really hard. Like it gives, I think, having knowledge of all the roles, or as many roles as possible, just really makes you a better
I agree.
leader.
No, for sure. And also it helps you be collaborative, because, if somebody can't, you know, they may read my script and like jump to a much harder conclusion, and I'm like, no, let's do it this, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, having that knowledge of like, okay, let's do it this way. We even had some issue, it's like, well, not issues, but when we did Off Ramp, our sound mixer, he was kind of, didn't have a ton of experience, and it came out great in the end, but he didn't have a ton of experience. And I remember one of the days, and the boom guy had the boom like way far away. And I was like, "What are you doing? Where's the boom?" And he was like, "Oh, it's over here." And I'm like, "No, listen, I will get that boom like right there. I want it right out of the shot. I was like, I want good sound. Like, please, like, let's work together to do this." And it really worked well together. I kept giving him advice and things, and he really took it. And it was like, because if you're a director who's just like, I don't know these things, all I know is the story and the actors, then I think you kind of then your film may not end up as great. And I think, look, I mean, do you think that the Coen brothers are just like casual about the sound? Like, there's no fucking way.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Well, so you threw the idea at Tim that you wanted to make a film about juggalos. Was it that general, or did you have the idea of it being a road picture?
Yeah, it was a road movie. The idea, and I had written a short version of it. I guess the point is, I mean, I guess we can, like, people should have seen the film, or maybe not. I don't know. Do we want to?
Yeah,
talk
they
about
should. Well, if
spoilers?
you're listening to this, there might be a spoiler or two, but I can tell you, someone who's seen the film more than once, it's not spoilable. It's a fucking great ride, and you see
Well,
something
thank
new
you.
each time too.
Oh, thank you. I do agree with that. I find that to be true, and I'm very blessed and happy that it does kind of present something new. We worked a long time to kind of layer stuff in there, but so it was a road movie. It was always a road movie. It was always about two juggalos on the way to the gathering, and there was always some shit that went wrong. And basically, the short, I had written the short, and it was like they basically get on the road and they joke around and they stop at a gas station, and so like those scenes were in there, and then the the big scene in the woods with the C-section, if you will, that scene was always in my head. That was like the kind of impetus for the whole thing. Was this, like, I had this image of these two juggalos, like with this baby singing miracles in the woods, And that was really kind of the like focal point that the whole kind of script started from. Because it was like, I think David Lynch says something like this, that like, an idea is like, it's like the idea exists out there in its completed form. And as you're making the film, you're just kind of like searching for it. You're like fishing to where to get to it. I'm paraphrasing or doing a poor job of it, but I think that what that is that sometimes, at least for me, this image just popped in my head, and it was just kind of like got obsessed with it, and because of that, it was like, let's build this whole story around it. And so we started really with that end. We started with that, how that last scene was, and then we kind of built it out from there. And we went through so many drafts. I mean, we spent so much time on this film, on the script. I mean, partially because there wasn't like any pressure to make it. It was just like, oh, we were doing this, and whatever. Tim had his own career writing other scripts, and he had other things going on, and like he was always like the guy I was looking at that, like, okay, like you are a more professional screenwriter, like you're helping me with my idea. And so he did, and he's very structured. He really like is like he works really well within the structure of a screenplay. And I was always kind of the guy who was like, oh, let's just do some random, what I think is goofy and whatever. And so he would always bring it back and sort of put it into that structure. And it's one of the reasons why I think our collaboration works so well.
And I think, well, there's a million different, there's an infinite number of ways to tell a story. But as someone who watches a fuck ton of indie films every year, I think you can tell easily who knew what their ending was when they started, who tried to find it, who had a premise, and then they tried to find an ending. Because, right, nothing, when you're watching films at festivals, and people might be greener at it, man, when there's a film that you just love the introduction, and then that second act kind of fizzles, and then the third act lets you down, you're like, oh man, you didn't know where you were going when you were still writing. You needed to keep working on that script. But seems like the ones where your end point from the scene you describe is also just a really touching ending too. Is really, so you had an emotional impact built in from the beginning. Because I know you had told me that various versions, or the longer you were with it, the more respect you got for the community, and changed a bit of the perspective, but you didn't change the climax.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, yeah, two things there. You're right. I guess it's interesting. Tim always made me. He's a very like strict like outliner. Like he's always like, let's outline this thing really well, and let's like really pinpoint where those tentpole moments, inciting incident, midpoint, third act, and he's like that. And so doing that really like helped me keep the structure together. And it's true that sometimes the third act can kind of fall flat. I think it's one of the hardest parts of a film to make, and very, very often I would say the majority of movies have a good first and second act with a decent premise, and then the third act is where it kind of falls apart, and you go, well, that's just such a hard one. So yeah, I mean, I think kind of beginning from the ending sort of did help us there. So that's true. And then to speak to the other thing you were saying is that, yeah, the longer I spent with the script, the more connected to the community I became. And I think, and that's for the benefit of the film and for me as a filmmaker, because I think if we had made the first version of it, it would have been funny and there would have been some things, but I don't think it would have had quite the heart that the film has now. And I think that the heart came so much, it really kind of came towards the like end of the whole process, because it was like, it's also like the bravery, I think, to say, fuck it, we're going to put whatever we want in here and we're going to like speak from the heart ourselves. Because so often too, I think you're thinking of, are people going to like it? And, that kind of stuff. And sometimes you go, well, it's important for me to like it first. And if I like it, then hopefully they will too. And so, yeah, so I did. I got way closer to the community, and I think people talk about a lot of that. There's a respect to the film kind of has for the community, and I'm happy to hear that coming through.
Yeah, I mean, and there's I mean, the film has nothing but respect for almost everyone involved, except an authority figure or two, I guess. Um,
Well, yep, the cops. Yeah, we can all
yeah,
fuck
fine. Yeah,
cops.
the cops, yeah, and yeah, yeah, but
And
which
authority, and
totally,
authority. No, I mean, and you're right. I mean, we
yeah,
always wanted to
yeah.
have
Even
a
like a
good
restaurant manager might deserve a.
play by my father. As a matter of fact, the restaurant manager is played by my dad.
Oh, cool! Very
Yeah,
cool.
that's great. My dad always likes to say he's like he always wanted to be. He was like, I was the best actor in my high school, and he always wanted to be an actor. And I was like, well, here you go, Pop. You know, let's get it. So now, yeah, now I have to put my dad in every movie I make. So
And guess what? Your dad is part of an award. He's an award-winning actor because the whole
that's
cast
right.
got an award.
That's right. I need to remind him of that. You're correct. I
That
need
is
to
very
remind him
funny.
of that.
You got him an award.
That's right.
But I was also going to ask, had you attended a gathering of the Juggalos before you started the script, or did you do it while working on it?
I had not. I had not attended a gathering before. I had attended an ICP concert in New Orleans, but I had not attended a gathering until in 2021 when we went and we filmed the B-roll. And also at that point I wanted to, I made a decision. I was like, if I don't go to this gathering, I'm going to be a poser. Like, how do I make a movie about this without going? And so I decided to go and do have two, it was twofold. One, to just really immerse myself in the community and get to know a lot of these folks beyond just kind of what I'd seen in documentaries and whatnot, and to shoot, to film B-roll. And so as I did, I one thing that I was really touched by was I just kept meeting people who were like my characters, that like they weren't just two-dimensional characters. They became real people to me. And I think that, again, that's part of that heart that really coalesced in those sort of kind of final moments. Because if I hadn't gone and hadn't really met these people and hadn't seen them as real people, I mean, you know what I mean? You write characters and their words on a page and you envision them. But then especially when you go out and meet people that are like actually reflect what you wrote, and you say, wow, this is right. Like, this was right to do. We want to talk about these things. These folks need a voice and a presentation. And so that's what we kind of did. So yeah, I went in 21 and I had a great time, and so much of the script, like so many of the details and stories and things that came out of that ended up in the script. The structure and the whole kind of like script was basically there, but like all of that kind of like all those idioms and sort of little stories and things really sprinkled in at the very last kind of second to really make it much more authentic.
Yeah, and it really is the authenticity that audiences yearn for, I think, right? Because when you see no matter what community it's about, you just want it to not be superficial.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then it's just unsatisfying.
Right.
And I gotta admit, the film makes me go like, man, maybe one of these days, you know, maybe for
Yeah.
my 60th birthday year, I'll hit the Gathering of the Juggalos and I'll hit a Burning Man finally. Who knows?
Yeah.
I kind
Well,
of
it's kind of
associate
like,
them as like things that would probably be super amazing to do, and you'd meet super amazing people there.
I have never been to a Burning Man, but I hear people really enjoy it, and I hear that it is a really wild experience. I do have a couple of friends who are burners, and they talk really highly about it. I can only speak, about the gathering, but I can say that like a couple of things about the gathering. One, I was scared kind of before I went, and that fear was for naught. I mean, these are just folks who are out having a good time. The other thing is that because of the attitude of the gathering and the juggalos like wanting to be accepting, and there's like a kind of a hyper kindness that goes on there, where people are all like they want to sort of preserve this safety net of this like moment and this place for them. So because of that, I think it's like one of those things that like no one wants to ruin that's there. They want to, so if someone drops, some money on the ground, somebody else was going to say, hey, that's you dropped your money. They don't want to be like, oh, let me get this money. But I will also warn you, if you go to the gathering and you see money on the ground, leave it there for two reasons. One, it may belong to someone. And two, there's a high degree of likelihood that it is what they call a poop dollar. And it is probably has some sort of feces that has attached to it. In fact, when I went back to the gathering this year in 24, I was walking away one night, leaving, and as I walked by, there was a dollar bill on the ground. And my first, of course, everyone's instinct is to try and pick up the dollar bill on the ground. And when I saw it, and then I realized, and I looked to my right, and there was a group of juggalos like sitting there, kind of snickering, waiting for someone to pick up their poop dollar. And it's one of those things. The gathering is a very accepting and loving place. However, there are many pranks that will be done because they are clowns. So don't forget. But it's all done in good fun, and it's not necessarily. It's if the Snickers are like well intended, So
Yeah, and if you happen to do that, you were green, you picked it up, and you should laugh too, right? Because it
exactly.
will wash off. It's not the end of the world. It's not a horrible prank. Yeah, it's not causing any permanent damage.
Exactly. No permanent damage. You just might have a stinky hand. Yeah.
For sure. And so with the film, uh, obviously, well, it's funny because there's two worlds for me to talk about, which is, first of all, I can tell you that the indie film world just loves it. Like everyone involved in our festival, everyone on our juries, everyone on the staff, everyone who was there, especially other film. There were a lot of, I told a lot of other filmmakers, do not snooze on this last feature. Like what, and there was standing room only in the back, but the film community just really appreciates it. And then, now that it's out, and I see, I still following your social media. So I see just, juggalos and including the top dogs, like just embracing the film because you got it right.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah. I think, we're very lucky and very grateful to everyone who supports and shows love to the film. And we've been lucky with festivals, and I think it is a small movie, so we don't have a lot of money for marketing or for promotion, but I think that it is a bit of a cult hit, and I hope, and I think that people like discovering a movie in a lot of ways. It's like one of those things that I do. I like it. I'm sure you do too. Like especially as a film fest programmer and owner, that it's like you get that chance to sort of discover something, kind of makes it almost all the more special to you. And so yeah, we're very lucky. We've had I even though I don't know if the movie's making any real money, or I'm not sure if it is, or we'll see, or hopefully, knock on wood, that it does. But what I really am, one of the things that really touches me and makes me feel really a great deal of joy is that I will just get like a direct message from someone that says, man, this film just really touched me, or I was really emotional, or like it made me cry, or like you got something right, or like I felt seen, or people who are a juggalo who says that, and other folks who aren't juggalos who are like, I didn't even know if I would like this movie, but like it's very sweet and endearing. And it's funny because we often get it, like people will call it wholesome. And I think it's really funny that, to think that our, Juggalo movie with as much violence and as much as much as many narcotics are done in the film, to also call it wholesome is something that I feel like a level of pride about, I suppose.
I totally get that. I totally understand applying the word wholesome to it, even if, there might be LSD and a squirt gun and this and that. It's still, because its heart is in the right place. I think that's what it takes to be wholesome, right? Is to be sincere. That
Yeah.
works.
Yeah, I think so. Well, and yeah, here, let me read you just so I'm going to pull out my phone for 1 second. Sorry, but I want to read you this great review that someone left the other day on Letterboxd, which I think was so great. So it starts out, it says, "Down with the clown, till I'm dead in the ground." And the person wrote, "Me, Alexa, give me a suggestion for a road trip movie about a pair of clown-faced criminals headed to the gathering of the Juggalos that has graphic violence, an acid trip, father-daughter incest, corrupt local politics, necromancy, breast milk, and maybe a graphic post-mortem C-section. Oh, and make sure it's trans-inclusive, has plenty of heart, and makes me feel good. Alexa, I've only found one movie. Nathan Tape's Off Ramp. Would you like to rent it? Me, fuck yes."
That person is a storyteller.
Yeah, no, they did a great job. I
They
was
totally,
very,
they set
yeah,
up a
it's really
scene
great.
and then that's
Yeah.
excellent.
No, but it's very,
All
I think
true,
that,
all true.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is true. I think that's the thing. I mean, I know we'll get to talk about other movies later on, but, movies that I love are movies that kind of give you a lot of range of emotion, and I think that's one thing that I really feel pride about with Off Ramp is that it does give you a lot of emotions. It really is a ride, not only for the characters, but I think for the viewer too. And very grateful that comes across.
And I've just got to mention the quality again that in every way, I think I said something along the lines, I don't like talking budget necessarily, but it certainly looks a lot bigger budget probably than it is. But also and this is a funny compliment because I'm accidentally putting down other indie films, but you did not come up short in any way at all. Like there's not a single scene that I look at and don't think it looks great, don't think the cinematography is great, the acting's great, the lighting's great, the sound is great. Like it's technically you nailed it so that
Thank you.
people can just watch it and get the story told. But I always like to point out to people, I'm like, you think that was easy? Like you think just that you don't notice that it's indie film anymore and you're just enjoying a movie? Like that's the hardest thing is to make an indie film where there's no moment where someone's sitting there and going, well, that's okay because it's indie.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Off Ramp doesn't have a moment like that.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I credit a lot of that to my, experience working in film. I think because I spent so many years as a gaffer and as an electrician and a DP, saw things from the highest level of production down to the lowest level of production. And I really believe that you can kind of take lessons from both sides of that. Like you can take lessons from a really big budget, but also, I would apply some of the lessons I learned on a tiny budget and apply them in big budget movies, and conversely too. So I think some of that, plus because I spent time here in New Orleans in the film industry, I had a really great group of people that I could mine for their abilities and also their points of view. So we had a really incredible crew of people who were more professionals, you know what I mean, like than maybe sometimes you have at your disposal in other places, maybe. So we ended up with a really great crew, and then so it's just kind of like they all elevated that, and I just called in a lot of favors too. I mean, I had been built up many favors over the past 15 years as a gaffer and electrician, and done a lot of other people favors, and then I was able to call them in, and so I think that's one reason why it came out looking so great. And also too, to got to credit my cinematographer Braun Moy, who is absolutely incredibly talented. And it was one of those things that was kind of I always debated because I was like, do I shoot my own movie or not? Because I know I'm capable of it. And there was always, my short film, Mariah, I shot and directed. And while I feel I'm pleased with how Mariah came out, I feel like I was maybe too focused on the camera because that's kind of was more my comfort zone. And so I felt like I didn't pay as much attention to the acting as I wanted to with Mariah, with my short. So when we made Off Ramp, I decided I was like, okay, if somebody else is going to shoot this movie besides me, I want it to be Braun. Braun is somebody who is a friend of mine we worked together he was an on-set dresser and I was a gaffer on a couple of TV shows. And he then kind of like expressed interest in being a cinematographer. And so we would talk about it all the time at work. And often when I was doing something lighting wise, he would like ask me questions and we would kind of just talk about it. And then he told me he was, interested in to being a DP. And so, so we just kind of like helped each other out. And so because of that, I knew that Braun was the kind of guy that I could hire and that we wouldn't be at odds, because sometimes, a DP and a director can be at odds. And like, I try not to be that as a DP now, but even when I was younger, I was, you just get this ego about it, whatever. And I knew Braun would be egoless about that. And if I said to him, hey, can you, dim this light down, or can you, if there's something I didn't like, he was always going to be okay with it. Braun just has like an incredibly generous and he's just a lovely human and just so calm. And so he was such a great presence on set. But it was also really interesting because sometimes he would ask me like, how would you like the scene? And I would kind of tell him like, well, I would do this. And then he would usually kind of start there and then he would kind of like adjust it to his liking. But it was really great because I felt like we were collaborating, but it was like, but I still wouldn't like ever like micromanage him. I didn't want to be like, oh, don't do that. I wanted him to contribute. And the film is significantly better because of his contribution. I mean, I look back and I'm like, thank God he shot it, because there's so many beautiful things that he did that if I had been doing it, I would have missed. And I just think that the acting would not have, I mean, they're great actors and it's a good script, but I just think that, actors need to, want and need direction. It's an interesting thing, like, because like Scott and John, like, John's kind of one of those guys who like just like, he reads the lines and he gets them and then he's gonna like, and then he kind of delivers it. And it's like he doesn't need or ask for a lot of direction in that way. I mean, obviously I give it when I wanted something different, but it wasn't like, that. Whereas Scott even came to me right at the beginning. He's like, I need direction. I want direction. He's like, I want you to tell me, what you want. And he asked that of me. And that was really a challenge to me to say, okay, keep doing that and keep your eye on it to make sure that you're giving him what he needs. And so I think, again, in the end, that's one reason why it turned out the way it did, because if I had been focused on the camera, I would have been too focused on the camera. I let Braun take care of that, and I was really able to concentrate with the actors. And again, it is visual. We always, Braun and I worked on, it was like, the lighting was always like, it was something collaborative in that, like, I knew we were doing the trailer and I wanted these sodium vapors outside of the thing. And I'm like, Braun, this is what I want. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, I brought my own sodium vapors to like put on the thing, but my point is that like, it was very collaborative in that way that it could look like what I wanted, but then have Braun's talents and abilities and his eye, really elevate it to the next level. And it really did.
For sure. And you said it for me. Clearly, it shows that the director of this film was fully supporting his actors, because every performance up and down is so well done. There's no way that would have happened if you had even half of your focus on something more technical.
It's my comfort zone, so I would have gotten like too myopic about it for sure,
Yeah, for sure. And so you were around, of course, stuff and seeing actors directed, but was this your first time directing actors for you since that short?
Yeah, this was the first time directing actors since the short in 2019. And really, truly, before that, the last time I really did, I mean, again, as a DP, so a couple of times as things that I shot as a DP, sometimes if the director themselves is not, doesn't have a strong vision or a strong, or even really experience being around on set, oftentimes I would kind of fill in that role. I would try not to direct, but I felt a lot of comfort about telling actors, "Hey, hit this mark, look this way." Do you know what I mean? There's a very close similarity to those things. And sometimes if a director didn't have experience, I would try and help step in. But yes, truly, the only times that I directed actors were when I was doing my films in film school, and then jump ahead 15, 20 years almost to Mariah. I had done music videos and music videos are, they're just not exact. And sometimes music videos would have actors in them. But it's just not the same, there's very little dialogue that you're dealing with, and it's a different thing. But I think my like technical, portion of being able to like kind of do that did help me to have that sort of shorthand. But yeah, I mean, I think too, writing the script and spending so much time writing the script really like buried it so deep in my brain that like, you know what I mean? I knew these characters really well.
Yeah, and you knew the story you're telling so intimately, and you were so close to it, and had so much respect for the community at that point. Yeah, you actually had a lot to do as director, I'm sure, to make sure that, because I guess a word I haven't used before is tone, because the tone is it really, wow, I just discovered something, which is a great film has a tone. Right. And if you watch a film that doesn't really have a tone that makes you feel like it's that film, that's one of the ones like a week later, you're like, what was the name of that? A week later, you can't name it. But it is needless to say, with a film festival having 50, 60 films a year coming through, I always love it when there's a film that you can just name the title and people remember it from 5 years ago. And it's because it has a tone is probably another word for vision, but
yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting one too, because we weren't even sure right up until we were shooting. We weren't really even sure like tonally that it would work, because there's a lot, like it's one of those things that it's like you're laughing, then you're sort of like, oh, you're shocked. Like there's a lot that goes on that's kind of, it's funny, but it's dramatic, but it's it's a road trip, but it's a horror, but it's like not, like there's a lot going on in that way. Somebody else besides me commented on the film and said that it was like a tonal miracle is how they put it, because it kind of is constantly sort of shifting tones. Which is
it was
interesting...
ballsy as fuck, because, or it was courageous as fuck, because even if you had that tone on the page and you knew what you're going after, it's not like you can say, I know this. I mean, you could believe in your heart that it would work, but you were gambling, because it's not like you can say, by the way, I'm inspired by all these other films that had that, like, because I probably have to go back to in the 80s, there were some films like After Hours and Into the Night that sort of have a tone where characters you care about have a series of misadventures through an adventure, but it's not something you see every day. I mean, not even close.
No, for sure. I mean, and some people may not even like that about it, but like whatever, that's something I like about it. It's interesting because
I've yet to meet someone who doesn't like this movie. I know I can. It's not like I can name thousands I've spoken to personally, but hell, the guy who recorded our Q&A at the festival, he sits there and he records them all, and he works in post-production full time. And, and he's actually because he watches every film sitting there in the theater, I'm like, you're on the Best and Fest jury. And I was like, okay, so you've watched them all on a 65-foot screen. What's your Best and Fest? He goes, it's Off Ramp by a mile. Like, and he said,
oh, wow.
And I would not have thought he's like, when I read the description of every film, I was like, I wasn't expecting to even like it. And he's like, there you go.
Well, that's thanks you for sharing that. That's one of my favorite reactions, is that people who, they don't expect to like the film based on the sort of subject matter or the rough around the edges sort of elements to it, but then they find the heart and the joy and the kind of the soul of the film, and they do connect with it, and that's really such a joy. But it's funny because talk about the tone just real quick, is that two things. One, Tim and I didn't even really know if it would work. We were like, I don't know if this will work, but this is what we want to do. So let's try it. And we're going to try it. There was a movie, there's a couple, but there's one movie that I noticed that really I saw not long before we started shooting that really like kind of nailed something for me. It's a movie called Seven Beauties by Lena Wertmuller. It's an Italian film. And it's actually the first movie nominated. The first Lena Wertmuller was the first woman nominated for Best Director as an Oscar, and it was a foreign film. So it's a real, that's a number of hurdles to climb to jump for the film. But Seven Beauties is a movie about a like womanizing brother of these sisters, and he ends up in getting arrested and going and being in a concentration camp during World War II. However, the movie is hilarious, and it's like it's both like endlessly funny but really sad and really touching, and also has like a minute-long fart joke that goes through the middle of the movie. And you're like, this movie is I was like, this movie is wild. Like it just like it goes from one thing to the other, and it does it so effortlessly. So we really, that was something that we kind of paid attention to. And it's funny because even as we started shooting, like right when we started getting to the end of the script writing and right before shooting, I kept, Tim and I would talk about it, and I would be like, no, it's an art film. I know it's a comedy, but it's an art film. Like that's what we need to do. Like, let's really try to that's what we really want to do. And even like as we started shooting, some of the producers and actors even were like, isn't this a comedy? And I'm like, yes, but it's not only a comedy. Like, yes, it's funny, and it is like it's certainly a comedy, and I certainly will say it is a comedy. But the more we can ride that line of like being laugh and emotion and joy, like all those things, if we can make people feel all those joys, I mean all those feelings, then I think we've done something. So I feel really honored whenever I hear that.
Yeah, and I mean, I love a buddy comedy, but this is way more than a comedy because honestly, one of the themes is love. I mean, these characters love each other. There is love on that screen. Oh, it's funny. I just noticed that in your log line, a couple of lovable juggalos, but the love between people it's palpable.
Mm. Yeah, thank you.
And even when Eden shows up and it's like the love, the instant love there, I totally get it. Like it's just it just works. It just works.
I think we all want and need love, and it's something that it's sometimes we may be embarrassed by the sort of need or desire for love or something, and suddenly I think and some other people have commented that they're like, it's like our movie is kind of like a bromance, right? It's like, it's really about two buddies, and like it is a love story. It's just a different kind of love story. It's not what your typical experience of a love story is,
Yeah, and it's honestly feels like family, even if they're not blood related. It's family,
right?
And they have good reason to consider each other fam.
Yeah,
as I recall,
particularly. Yeah,
for sure. But we're being pretty good about no spoilers, which is not bad. Pretty getting better at this. So now that it's out, I believe I know from your social media you're actually getting close to another project. Am I overstating it?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, we have written 2 scripts. They're both great. We're excited about both of them. But I still want to I'm just like, it's such a, it's weird because like making your first movie, once you make it, then you kind of start to see yourself as an artist a little different, right? You're kind of like, it's not exactly like you almost don't know what kind of filmmaker you are until you make your movie. At least that's what I've experienced. That I didn't really know, I just had these ideas and these things I wanted to say and these whatever. And now, you're kind of like looking at that and you're sort of like look at it a little bit differently. So I guess I just want to be careful about what my second film is, because you never know how many chances we're going to get to do this. And, you want to make sure that it's right. Plus, it's like movies aren't cheap to make, even if you're making them on a budget and you're on a low budget, it's still a lot of money. It's maybe not be a lot of money compared to big movies, but it's still quite a lot of money. And so it's a bit like, it's a bit of a balancing act. So I wouldn't say we're not close to another project. We are certainly are. And again, since we completed this, we've written two feature scripts, both of which are really cool. It's just kind of like deciding if either one is exactly the right situation right now, and if it's, or how excited somebody else might be about it. How excited does somebody want to help us invest, or help us, whatever kind of thing. And again, I just think, I don't know. And this is probably my own fault. I mean, I'm just getting in my head about it, but there's that fear of the sophomore slump is sort of like real. You don't want that. I don't want that sophomore slump. So I want to make sure that number two is something, that we're really, like this movie turned out to be. I'm very proud of this film. And the other thing is that, you have to live with this film. Every film you make, you have to live with. I mean, you have to live with it for the rest of your life, but in a very real sense, you have to live with it for like at least 2 to 3 years. I mean, people ask me, they're like, how many times do you think you've seen Off Ramp? And I'm like, how about a third of a year?
Yeah.
Like, that's how many times I've seen it, So you really want to be like, you want to make sure that you care about the characters and you connect with them, that you're willing to spend that much time with them. And I think about, and I feel pride and joy that this is the film that I did spend that time with. I do love these characters, and I do, but I just want to make sure that we do it again. And so yeah, I wouldn't say we're not close. I would love to be making something by next summer, but we'll see if it comes to fruition. But I really, 2025, I really want to start. I want to shoot something. I want to be doing something, whether it's one of those two films, or if it's one of these third or fourth, because we have like a whole list of like stories that we've kind of come up with outlines for and are in various stages of development. And they're all our children, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like picking which one to go with for that time.
And is there a little bit of an element of seeing how Off Ramp does and hoping that, if you can get over the hump and get that word of mouth going, that you can show people a track record that can help you out?
Absolutely. I mean, it's no question. I mean, there's certainly that kind of, does one thing help feed the other? And it's also like, is it on the one hand, if the one hand, it's like do it all over ourselves again, right? Like just scrape together whatever money we can and do whatever we can for as little as possible and whatever. Or there's those other sides of like, well, maybe somebody else is interested in helping, or whatever. And it's like they become different budget sizes too, right? Because if you're like, well, if we're doing it all ourselves, then we want to spend as little as possible. If somebody else is there, it's not like we want to overspend or whatever, but, you particularly start things like cast, because when other people start to invest in the film, cast becomes kind of crucial as to how you can sort of sell it. That being said, I mean, whatever I do next, I want to include as many people as I can from Off Ramp, both cast and crew. I mean, really loved so many of the people that we worked with and felt like it was such a beautiful experience. And, my favorite filmmakers have a certain bit of a acting troupe that they go back to, which makes sense. There's a bit of a shorthand. And when you're writing, it's kind of easier in some ways to think of certain people as certain characters, and plus the thing. And I think just like building and adding on to that. But those are kind of the kind of things we're debating too, and like viability, like what's commercial, like is there something that's, I'm never gonna do something that's like super commercial, but like what's the most commercial thing we could do? You know what I mean? Like what's the most potentially successful, because as great as a film is, and as Off Ramp is, and as like critically successful as it is, I mean, how it continues on remains to be seen. And we certainly would love to have more people watch it and but you never really know. And it's like, I mean, it doesn't matter that much to me if the movie really ever makes any real honest money. I feel so much more joy that people connect with it and that they feel seen or like moved by it. That's so much more valuable to me. But it makes it it makes it easier to make another film when you have one that has made some money,
Absolutely. And I mean, it is the kind of film I know for a fact from some other things that when something is of this quality and it gets out there, I mean, what can I say? I'm crossing my fingers for you because you've got the core, you've got the core support of the Juggalo community, which is great because that can help push things up with algorithms and whatnot. Because if people just start coming across it, I can tell you, if they watch the first 5 minutes, they're watching it to the end, which is all that matters, right? And then, algorithmic amplification is a horrible thing in a lot of ways in our society. But if it can amplify quality art, then it's like almost worth what it's done to the rest of our society.
Almost.
I'm not sure in an election year I can live with that statement, but
but yeah, I know, I feel you. And look, if you have seen the film and you enjoyed it, please tell your friends and give us a
friends
positive
and write
review.
reviews. I should add, if you're listening to this and you have watched it, don't be that person who doesn't write the review, whether it's Letterboxd or IMDb or even anywhere. I'm even
Rotten
giving it the
Tomatoes.
thumbs up. Does Netflix? Well, whatever. Once it's streaming, like these things matter. It is amazing.
100%. 100%. As an independent filmmaker, we live and die by those ratings and those things. And we've been really lucky to have a great Rotten Tomatoes score from from the critics. We're very, very lucky. But it's we need those other things. We need those IMDb's and we need those letterbox reviews. They're very helpful for us. And strangely enough, they're actually even helpful in distribution. I mean, I've been talking to my sales agents and they actually said that they got some more bites for our international distribution based off of the later round of letterbox and Rotten Tomatoes reviews. So those things really help us get out there. And if you like the film, please, if you don't like the film, you don't have to if you don't want to. Don't.
That is the other thing is, the troll thing. Don't get me started about trolls in indie films. I mean, it doesn't apply to yours, but like I've seen indie films we've had at the festival that are just fucking wonderful, and like someone with no money at all who used cardboard cutouts of people in their living room to create a bar where the extras are made of cardboard. And then you read the review and someone's like, this was really low budget. And it's like, that's not a review. Fuck you. Don't criticize a film for being low budget. Watch it for what it is. But luckily that wouldn't happen to Off Ramp.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I actually sounded pretty cool. I think that the cardboard cutout thing sounds rad.
It's fucking great. Great. If you ever want to watch it someday, it's called Man Under Table. What can I say? I can't help but pitch it because
of course.
Because the dude poured his heart into that sucker.
Absolutely. Hey, every movie is a miracle. I mean, that is a statement that I heard somebody said, and it is so true. I mean, just everything.
If it comes out well, it really is because there's so many people involved.
I mean, even a terrible movie, even the worst movie, took a lot of work to make, and that's the thing. And I've said this. I said this on as a gaffer, and I think it applies even more. But I say, you can do your best work on the worst movie or your worst work on the best movie, but the only thing that matters in the end is the movie, because people see your name on your resume, and if the movie's great, then they're going to forgive everything else. I knew a guy who was a key grip on Pulp Fiction, and he got ran out of like multiple towns, LA, Texas, New Orleans, Atlanta. He was kind of an asshole, but the guy, because he was a key grip on Pulp Fiction, every resume would come across his desk. I mean, people were going to be like, well, of course I want the key grip from Pulp Fiction,
For sure. That bought him an extra 5 to 10 years, huh?
I think it bought him an extra 30 years, to be quite honest with you.
Damn.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But yeah.
All right, cool. Anything else you want to mention, or should we wrap it up?
I think, yeah, I feel pretty good. I mean, thanks so much for this. This has been great. I mean, you want me to mention the socials now? Do that kind
For
of
sure,
thing?
yeah, yeah. I mean, we squeeze them in the beginning, but let's do them again.
Let's squeeze them in at the end again because can't ever overstate it enough. Offrampfilm.com is our website. We also have some merch there as well. We have like hats and some of the characters t-shirts. So if you're a fan, you can order a shirt. We would love that. But if you want to watch the film, offrampfilm /watch, and that will show you all the different places that you can see the film. Also on every social, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. We are Off Ramp Film. Myself, I'm Damn Nathan, DAMNATHAN on Instagram. I try to respond to DMs and things like that as much as I can. So please reach out. The film's out there. Please, check it out. If you're a juggalo or if you're not, either way, it's for everyone. The film's for all types of people. And yeah, thanks so much, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Hey, look, it's a pleasure. All right, I will get us out of here by thanking everyone for listening. And by the way, everything that Nathan just mentioned will be a clickable link in the show notes. So go to the show notes. There'll be clickable links for you to jump and find out where to see Off Ramp.
Also, let me also just quickly add, if you don't already, please, if you are a filmmaker, submit to Sherman Oaks Film Festival. They are a lovely bunch of folks, and they really do care about the filmmakers. Jeff has been so kind and continued to show support, and it really means so much. When you make films and you need film, as a filmmaker, you're like looking for film festival, and it's so hard. And then when you meet people like Jeff who truly love independent cinema and will champion for you, it's really awesome. So submit to Sherman Oaks and check it out. Go see them. They're a great little festival out there.
Much appreciated. Much appreciated. All right. Hey, like and subscribe to this podcast if you're listening, and even write a review. Give it 5. I don't even know where you can give a podcast 5 stars anymore. But I used to. I'm going to joke about it one last time. I believe. Oh, I should have looked it up. But I believe you're going to be around episode number. This one might be 459. Well, okay. It might be 459. But amusingly, I don't have that many reviews on. I'm like, if everyone who was on the podcast wrote a review, that'd be sweet. But I'm just kidding. So anyway. Thank you for listening. If you want to learn more about this podcast, it's discoverindiefilm.com, and on social media, it's always at DIFwins. There is a companion TV series on Amazon Prime Video. If you just search for Discover Indie Film, it pops up. There's 7 seasons. It's just talking to people like Nathan. Look, Off Ramp got out there. Talking to filmmakers on this podcast, way back in 2017, I found out most of the features got out there and most of the shorts didn't go anywhere. So I said to the people who made shorts, you want to put all your shorts together? We'll make it a TV series and just do Amazon Prime Video Direct. And like 25 of them said yes. So we've got 7 seasons of that so far. So it's honestly just the best shorts that we found on the festival circuit. So that's the Discover Indie Film TV series. If you want to learn more about the Sherman Oaks Film Festival that Nathan was so nice to compliment, it's ShermanOaksFF.com, and it's at ShermanOaksFF on social media. Its sister festival that we hold every June is Film Invasion Los Angeles. You can learn more about that at FilmInvasionLA.com, and it's at FilmInvasionLA on social media. And finally, because I won't make fun of myself, but I stretch myself thin. For various reasons, there is now something that might be very beautiful called the Indie Channel. And it's on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, Android TV, iPhone and Android mobile. And if you download the Indie Channel app, it's an attempt to counteract the streaming behemoths that don't support indie at all. And we're sort of like proud socialists there. 50% of gross receipts are shared evenly among all the filmmakers. Doesn't matter if your film's watched 1,000 times and someone else has watched 10. If you're contributing to the Indie Channel, you're an equal partner. So anyway, the indie channel is something that I got. Sometimes you have an idea and you can't refuse it. So anyway, that is all I need to say to wrap this up. Make sure to listen to the podcast after this one, because Nathan's going to answer the Discovery Indie Film 4 questions, which are name 3 favorite films, an underrated film, an overrated film, and a lesser-known film that people should seek out. And in fact, if that one you named by the Italian director...
Seven Beauties.
Is that going to be on your list? Because if not, I got to write it down, because as soon as you mentioned the extended fart joke and other things, that has to be watched in my household. So
you will very much enjoy Seven Beauties. Go ahead and write it down. I mean, it is. It could be my underrated one. Maybe we'll see. I wanted to make sure I asked you to name it again, because that is sort of a must see. Needless to say, I don't think. Well, if there is a household where farting is discouraged, I wouldn't want to know those people. Farts are funny. Farts are funny in every language, and if you don't think a fart is funny, I question your sense of humor.
Agreed. Or I don't even question. I'm just certain that you don't have one.
Exactly.
If that doesn't make you laugh.
Yeah.
All right. I love it. We close with farts. Not
of course
my fault, but all good. All right. Thank you, Nate.
There's no fault. There's no fault in farting. Good way to go.
Shakespeare would have done fart jokes if he could get away with it. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
I bet there might be one.
I think there actually are some fart jokes in Shakespeare. I'm pretty sure.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
That's something I should know better. I should have said even Shakespeare. Fart joke.
Absolutely.
But well, thanks so much, Jeff. Summer's Night Dream or whatever. All right.
Yeah, for sure.
I will hit stop, and then we'll do your 4 questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening.